Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Giant Slayers podcast. I am excited today to have Catrina Friesen, who hails from Georgia and is the CEO of Banner Communications, and who's also an author, speaker, and worship leader. So thank you so much, Catrina, for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's exciting. I love that I can connect with people, and it doesn't matter what's happening outside, we can still chat from all over the world. So it's really cool.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your testimony and maybe some of the giants that you've slayed with Jesus along the way?
Got it, got it. Okay, well, I was actually born and raised in Saginaw, Michigan. And as long as I can remember, I have loved singing. I mean, I think that the story is that I sang, before I could really talk. And it's the thing I love the most that I have enjoyed doing, all these years. And interestingly enough, I began singing professionally at the age of 15. I was in a school play, and during intermission, there was a guy who was a manager of a local girl group who approached me and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to be a part of our group as the lead singer."
Right on.
I thought, this is my big break. Oh my goodness. So I auditioned, for him. And actually, I didn't really officially audition because he had been following me all over town. Like, I was one of those kids who was always in talent shows, and I sang in church, and I sang at school. Wherever I could sing, I was on the stage.
Right.
And so we immediately began recording and touring. And I mean, it was just a complete whirlwind in terms of me being a high schooler and professionally singing. I loved it. The first time I heard myself on the radio was crazy because it was a dream of mine always as a little kid that I was going to be on stage, on TV, on the radio, doing my thing.
Right.
Well, I guess by the time I was graduating from high school, my mom was like, "Okay, well, it's time to go to college." And I thought, no, I think it's time for me to go to LA so I can sign with a major label and I can win a Grammy. I have all these dreams. And she's like, "No, ma'am, you're going to go to college. I think you need to pick one, and then you can sing after college." So needless to say, she won that fight. And I ended up going to school in Baltimore, Maryland. Went to Morgan State University. And it was the best decision ever because I majored in music and I sang with the university choir. And that choir travels the world. And I learned so much during that time. I learned about, of course, the industry. I learned about the craft, but I also had the opportunity to act, to model. I mean, it was just like one thing after the other. Wherever I could get on a stage, again, I was doing so, just bigger stages. And I knew that this was something that was going to be a part of my life forever. Now, what I didn't anticipate was God pursued me really hard in college. Now, I had grew up in church and I'd always known church, but I took a little break from church when I went to college, and that was not a good decision.
Yeah. Your mother had nothing to do with that one. Yeah.
Not at all. And I ended up almost really literally losing my life, honestly. In a crazy drag race after a frat party and some people who were drinking. It was terrible. And I knew that night I would not see the next day. I mean, it just felt like this is going to be it. And then I'm thinking in my mind as I'm in the car with these drunk people, and I'm thinking, really? This is how the end of my life is going to be? I'm like, "Lord, I need you to get me out of this immediately." And he literally did. I ended up back to campus safely. And it was that moment that I fell on my face as soon as I got in my dorm room and said, "Lord, I am so sorry. If you take me back, I will never leave again. I will not." And I literally changed everything about what I was doing in that period of time. And
Wow.
went back to church, dusted my Bible off. I mean, just everything transformed back to what I knew and what I had grown up knowing, to pursue God and to really hear Him. Because not only did I have go through this time of rededicating my life, but God began to speak to me about about the call of God on my life and what He wanted me to do. And it's so funny because I was not looking for that. I just thought, okay, I'll go back to church. I'll go back to what I'm used to doing. He's like,
Yeah.
no. And my senior year before graduating, here I am, a music major, getting ready to get my degree. And God says, I have all these opportunities. I can go back to singing. I can renew my modeling contract. I can sign a film deal. I mean, just cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then all within a week before finals, all those opportunities went away, just in crazy ways. And the one opportunity that was open that I wasn't even pursuing, it just fell in my lap, was an opportunity to work in ministry.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, God, that's not funny. And He said, listen, I want to give you a vision for what you're going to do. I want you to build a faceted entertainment company that's going to be a haven for people, for talented and creative people who are believers. Now, in order for you to prepare for this work, I need you to be in ministry, to be transformed so that you're ready for the work I have for you. Now, none of that made sense to me then. Here I am, 19, 20 years old. So, okay. But I know it's Him speaking. So I'm like, okay. Well, if you wanted me to do a business, why didn't you have me major in business? Like, what in the world? I don't know a thing about starting a business. But now, look, so giant number one. I knew nothing about business at all. And literally, He led me to the library, which is one of my favorite places. And I got all these books out about starting a business and about, writing proposals and about financing. And I mean, just everything I could read and everything I could take down to begin and putting a plan together, how to write a business plan. I mean, literally, I just got all these how-to books and just started writing everything he said down. I ended up moving to Richmond, Virginia, and which is not an entertainment place at all, or it was
Yeah.
definitely what then.
I was
This is
going
in
to
the
say,
90s.
I don't know much about the States, but I wouldn't have pictured that there.
Not in a million years. Not in a million years. And I ended up working full time in a ministry there and learning so much. I mean, I literally I was a secretary for, a couple of ministers in there. I worked with children. I worked in every department you can think of in different situations, which made no sense to me until later in life. So I'm doing all of this now. Fast forward, I'm 26. I'm sitting in church, literally. The pastor is preaching. And in the middle of his sermon, he stops and he looks at me and says, God has given you a vision for entertainment that you've been holding for a long time, but the desire is still there. He literally has had to take time to transform you on the inside, to prepare you for the work that He has for you. Now is the time for you to start that work. And then he goes back to preaching like he never said anything.
Wow.
And I'm looking like, what? Even though the pastor knew my name, let alone he knew all of that. You know what I mean? I didn't hear the rest of the sermon
I
either.
was just going to say, I bet you didn't hear anything else
It
after
was like
that.
Charlie Brown, wah, wah, wah. I just was like, oh my goodness. And so literally after church, I rushed home and dug out my business plan and got to work. I mean, and again, I had to learn as I was going because I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew enough, you know what I mean, to get started. And so I trained singers and actors, aspiring singers and actors. And
Right.
I, produced shows, and I had a great group of friends who helped me out. They were my first staff. And they were like, we'll volunteer for 1 year, just what you need us to do. And they were great. And I mean,
That's awesome.
I wouldn't trade that experience for the world, but it was the start of Banner Communications. And I think the biggest thing for me was not believing that God could do that, but that he would use it to minister to people. Because even though I was teaching people voice and modeling and all these different types of things, what the real work that was happening was there were girls coming to me with family issues and different situations that I was able to talk them through and pray with them and give them scripture. And I mean, it was ministry, even though it was still work. And I mean, just the impact of different people that even today, former students of mine, to look at what they're doing now, I'm very excited that they're still with God, they're doing great in the industry and all that kind of stuff. But it was a fight to keep going, because I was working a full-time job and I was taking my vacations trying to do shows, and it was just like but I loved every minute of it, because he taught me that when he says a thing and when you obey him, when he gives you instructions and you obey him, you don't have to worry. It could be hard for a moment, but not the kind of hard when you're just doing your own thing and doing crazy stuff. God can make things seamless for you and give you the favor that for things to happen that you never think would happen. And I mean, literally, so much has happened in my life that I would have never expected that is good and amazing, that there's no way to doubt him at all.
Yeah, and there's no I'm actually in the process of learning this right now, but there's no striving. Like, we're so programmed to strive, to break our backs, to have a heavy load, all this garbage, right? And figure it out for yourself, and it's all you, and you're the superstar. And to then go from that to, God, I have no idea what I'm doing. Would you just take it? I just give it to you, and then he's like, awesome, because I've been waiting for this, but then it's like really trusting him to take you forward. And something you said actually that got me really excited was how you were saying that you were doing all this stuff and it wasn't like a typical ministry, but you were out in the world like doing this. And I honestly think that is how ministry is supposed to be. We've kind of locked it up in the church for so long that, I think we've gotten so accustomed to being little birds being like, feed me, feed me, feed me. But it's actually, we should be feeding ourselves 24/7. And yes, absolutely going to church and edifying each other and building each other up and ministering to each other. I think that's beautiful. But then it's also being able to, instead of separating lives, like, I'm a Christian on Sunday and then the rest of the week I'm like blending in, it's that beauty of being able to go into the world and be like at peace. And I might not have the answers for you, but I know someone that does. And it's such a beautiful open door. And I'm so excited because I really can see how we're starting to shift out of the church into the streets and into our everyday lives. And so, I really like that you mentioned that. And for anybody listening, like, if you're kind of frustrated right now, wondering what kind of ministry you have, start out in your everyday life first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's definitely, entertainment alone is unorthodox in terms of how we do things. But to add Jesus to that,
yes,
to let him lead you into situations where you think you're meeting a person for one reason, and then it turns into something else that's life-changing for them, that you wouldn't trade. There's nothing to trade.
No, it's next level. I actually God did quite a work on me this past weekend with baptism, but I was really shy and I wouldn't approach people. And I think it was about a week ago, I approached this older lady and had the opportunity to pray for her, because she just admitted, she's like, I'm just really scared right now, and everything's so uncertain. And I just walked away like, God, that was actually really beautiful, and I'm so glad that you've changed me where I'm not scared anymore, because we have it's such a beautiful opportunity. And when you can get out of your own head and just let your
Yes.
heart connect with the kingdom of God and just let it flow, you walk away just in such awe of God and his beautiful heart for people.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I definitely do.
Yeah. So do you still, because like he kind of took you in a different direction, do you still get to sing and like that kind of stuff on your own, or is this something that he's put you into full time?
Well, interestingly enough, I've always led worship in my church. And here recently, I have been itching to get back in the studio and record. So that is that is deep in my heart right now, to get back as soon as possible, because I have music in me, and I've been writing and different things like that. So I'm really looking forward to, in this next turn of the going into 2021, being able to offer some worship music. So basically, when I did the company, I was a worship leader at my church in Virginia. And then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And it's so funny because I met my husband through worship.
Oh, nice.
I was invited. That same pastor that prophesied to me is now a bishop, and he planted a church in Atlanta. And my husband was going to that church, and they had invited me to Atlanta to lead worship at a youth conference. And I was like, sure, okay, that's fine. And so I came to Atlanta, and my husband was playing in the band.
Uh,
And a mutual friend of ours who was also like the leader over the music group. He was like, hey, you guys, this is, Stacy, this is Catrina, we're going to sing this. It was that kind of thing. But they continued to invite me for this youth conference every year. So I would come every year and lead worship. And I would see my husband. Of course, I didn't know he was my husband at the time, but I would see him every year. And I was like, oh, hey,
yeah.
we became friends. But little did I know, he was checking me out all that time. And I didn't know it was a setup, but a great setup to say the
Yeah.
least.
Did
But
he know?
say it again.
Did he know?
My husband?
Yeah, like about you. Did he have a knowing about you at all?
Yes, he had the guy who introduced us is his best friend,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't know at the time. And he has said, man, I really want to, introduce me to this girl. She's beautiful. She's anointed. I want to meet her, that kind of thing. But I didn't know when we first met that he was interested in me. I just,
Right.
he was just a guy in the band. I went back home to Virginia, come back, every year. And then maybe about the third year, he struck up a conversation with me. And I was at that time, planning to relocate to Atlanta, because the Lord had begun speaking to me saying, hey, I want you to move to Atlanta. I want you to take your company there, that kind of thing. And it's a larger market. More things are happening in entertainment. And I was like, okay, great. And he kind of helped me get my bearings, in the city
Right.
to prepare working. So it was really funny. I always tell people, my joke is, he was stalking me all that time. And then the Lord just, opened the door for him.
Yeah, right. It was like, boy, you ain't ready yet. But three is a good number, I was thinking. That's always a good number. Um, so I was thinking back of over where you were saying, where you were playing Fast and Furious. Um, when after you got out of that car and you were like, okay, God, like it's yours. That was too crazy for me. And you said you turned things around. Did you have any issues? Because I know a lot of people hold themselves back from accelerating in their lives because of peer pressure and all that kind of stuff. What was that transition like, going from being in the car with those people to doing an about face?
You said, what did the transition look like?
Yeah.
For me, it was pretty drastic. So that night, my prayer was, Lord, if you take me back, I'll never leave again. And I don't remember the rest of the prayer, but I remember waking up the next morning and I was still on the floor. Wow. From where I was praying. And I got up, I went and got a trash bag, and I threw away all my seductive clothing, all my makeup, all my, my phone number, my phone book, all the guys that I dated and all that stuff. I just like threw all the crazy stuff that I could think of away. Wow. And my Bible was in the back of my closet. I dug it out literally. And I called I called those friends and said, hey guys, I'm about to go back to church. So I'm gonna take a little break, like love y'all, but I'm gone. And literally kind of turned my phone off to really commit to God. So all I had left was, some jeans and, you know what I mean? Like I had some stuff to go to class in, but I didn't wear any makeup. I tied my hair up. And it wasn't so much that I was trying to look holy per se. It was just, I was trying to look so plain and normal that no guy would ask me out. Because I was like, you know what? No, guys, I'm just going to focus in on Jesus right now. I need to do this for 90 days. I gave myself for 90 days. I'm just going to focus on Jesus. No partying, no going out, none of that stuff, and do my work. Because I had, in the midst of me being crazy, I went from being a 4.0 student to losing a scholarship and being a 2.5 student. To the degree or to the point of my mom saying, is it time for me to come and get you? Because clearly you're not doing what you're supposed to do there. Yeah. I literally had to beg her to let me stay in school. And that I would figure out how to, make up the difference of my scholarship being lost to stay in school. Right. And it was helpful to me. I read my Bible. I went to class. I did my homework. I read my Bible. That was my routine every day. And I went to school. I went to church. And I went to Bible study. There was a guy who had been inviting me to Bible study every week during my whole crazy time. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to that. And I was like, hey, where's Bible study? Right. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. And so, that was kind of my transformation. People were, it's so funny because people thought, I was pledging a sorority or something, because it was like day and night how I looked. And I was like, no, that's not it. And, but it was the best decision for me to focus in, and it allowed me to get reconnected to God and to discover things that I had never experienced before in the supernatural. So that's kind of how it was for me. Yeah. Okay. So you just hit on one of my favorite topics. Do you want to share some of those experiences? Because I think that one of the neatest things when you turn your life back around is, especially when you've had such a strong encounter with God, that the supernatural opens up and he starts to show you where you're from, and you're just like, whoa, this is crazy. So yeah, like I would love if you shared like a couple of things about that. One of the things that happened to me is that, I'll give you an example. I would go to sleep. I went to sleep. I had a dream about a friend of mine who was in one of my classes. And the next day, or I want to say either was the next day or a couple days later, I saw her and I said, oh my goodness, I had a dream about you. And I described the dream in detail, what I could remember. And as I'm talking to her, she is looking like, she said, that just happened the other night. Wow. Exactly how you said it. And so she's like, are you prophetic? And I was like, what's that? And so she's like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? And so because she was more versed in the things of God than me, and so I didn't even know what prophetic was. I never heard that word before.
Right.
And so things like that would happen. Like people would come to class and I would see words literally on people's foreheads if they were dealing with certain issues or spirits. And again, I didn't know anything about spirits. So
Right.
I would see words and I would be like, what in the world? And I'm thinking, what is this? What's happening?
Did
So
you did you know it was God? Like, did you know that it was from that transition?
I thought it was weird at first, and and I was just inclined to go home or go to my room and say, God, what was that? I mean, what was that? And
Yeah.
so he would begin to explain, but my what do you call it? My ability to hear the voice of God was not as clear. You know what I mean? It's like God's so gentle with us. He talks to us on our level, but if your level is low, if you don't know a lot, there's no point of reference for
Yeah.
you to fully understand. And so what I began to do is read the scriptures, and I was like, oh, okay, okay. You know what I mean? And then I asked questions. Like, I couldn't get through Bible study without, okay, can I just ask this question? I would go to different people who I knew were Christians and, who were more devout than me. And I was like, okay, well, what about this? Okay, well, what about this? Okay, well, what about this? And I mean, people were like, this girl is, because I needed to know what was happening to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I was knowing things about people. There was a guy in my class, and it was one of the few times, or one of the first times that God spoke to me, like really detailed about a person's life. And he said, I want you to go to this guy and tell him if he doesn't get his life together, there are going to be consequences, and he had better answer the call now. Now,
It's like, thanks God, I'd love to give him that
I'm
word.
like, Renee, come on now. I'm like, come on, Lord.
Yeah.
You can't be serious.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't really know this guy. Like, we're not friends. He's in my class, but I don't really know him that well. And then I'm like, come on, God,
Yeah.
that's just too much. So I go to class and I'm shivering. The whole class, I can't even concentrate because I know what I got to do. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm saying, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And God and I have this conversation. He's like, well, do you want this person to go to hell? I mean, do you want to be responsible for this person walking down a path that would lead them to destruction? It was like literally that kind of conversation. I'm like, no.
No pressure. Yeah.
No pressure at all. Now, when the class dismissed, the guy ran out of the room, like quick. And I thought, well, I'm off the hook. He left. So clearly, I'm not going to be able to talk to him. So I'm grabbing my things. Everyone is out of the class. I have walked down the hallway to the office where I work, because I worked at the school. And right. The guy comes back because he left his textbook in the class. I had to go back to class because my professor sent me back to class to get something for him.
Wow.
We're in the class, the only two people in the class now. And I'm thinking, golly, are you kidding me? So I said, excuse me. I know this is going to sound really weird and random, but I believe I need to tell you something. And so he's like, okay. And I say, I said, the Lord said to me, if you don't get yourself together and answer the call of God now, there are going to be consequences. And so and he says, that is God right there. Thank you so very much.
Wow.
I got it. Today, that guy is a pastor.
Wow.
And it just amazed me because I was so ready for him to say, girl, you crazy. But he completely received what I said. And it was the beginning of me understanding the prophetic, because the minute I heard that word, I began to look up what it meant, who the prophets were, what they did. And, literally, I mean, the the Old Testament prophets, they didn't say, hey, you're going to get a house, you're going to get a husband, you're going to be rich.
Yeah.
They said, if you don't get it together,
Yes.
this is what's going to happen. Judgment is around the corner. And God began to do that a lot for me. I was literally afraid to go to sleep, because every time I went to sleep, I would dream about someone, and he would send me to that person to say something. And I'm like, come on, God, this is just too. But every single time the person said, that is spot on. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for telling me that.
Yeah. And did you find that, as you went along and you kept getting that confirmation that now you like very quickly it becomes easy, where it's just like, God doesn't kind of give you things to make you look like an idiot?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. It became easier and easier. And the funny part is, it went from my classmates to older people to clergy people. I mean, like every phase of my life, he has begun, at this point now, I mean, I'm the wife of a pastor, so I can, you know what I mean? I'm going to say whatever I got to say.
Yeah.
But every now and again, I do still get nervous because of who the person is sometimes. Sometimes,
Right.
he'll send me to people, I'm like, ooh, are you serious? Okay. He
Yes.
opens the door, but I'm positive that it's what he said, and I'm positive that he's prepared their hearts to hear it.
Yes.
I think that's the piece that I learned along the way, that God doesn't just work in me alone. He doesn't work in us one at a time. He works in us all at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, I think, because again, like going back to how we're so conditioned, it's me, and what I have to do. And, it's just always that kind of tunnel vision. Whereas he opens it up and he's like, oh no, like you're part of this massive, massive picture, and you can either play the game with me and do amazing things. And I like to think of it as a game, because if you think of it like other ways, I feel like I just sweat too much and I don't do it. But whereas it's a game, it's like, sometimes I always joke like I'm a secret ninja for God, because you'll go do something and it's just like, this is so much fun, right? Whereas if I put the pressure on myself, I'll choke. So, but I feel like he invites you to this big, game board, if you will, and there's all these different pieces, and it's like, you can have as much fun with me as you want, because really it's your limitations. God doesn't have any. So yeah, so I like that you're sharing this, because it is a little nerve-wracking at first when God starts to open that up, because you're like, you want me to do what? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So have you like had any kind of encounters that have been like just life altering besides the Fast and the Furious?
Encounters that have been life altering. You mean with God or in my life in general?
Yeah, I would say with God,
Define
like,
encounter.
or like, because sometimes it comes in a form of an angel, like just, yeah, just something where it really just shifted you maybe in a different direction than what you were aiming for or something. Yeah.
I see what you mean. I think the experience that I've had, when I moved to Richmond, Virginia, my entire time of being there was an experience of learning more and more about God that I had not considered before. And a coworker had invited me to intercessory prayer, and I didn't know what intercessory prayer was. I mean, I'm like, what's that? And
Yeah.
so she began to explain, and I was like, I don't know. That's going to be a hard pass, because I don't think that's for me. And so she's like, no, Catrina, you really should come. And it's so funny, because the woman that was over intercessory prayer at the time, she was as I'm being invited, she's walking down the hallway. She's like, "Come on in." But you don't refuse the mother of the church. I mean, you just.
Yeah, right.
So here I am in this room with all these people who call themselves intercessors, and I'm thinking, "Oh Lord, what's going to happen in here?" And what ended up happening was I began to listen and become fascinated with prayer, with learning the power of prayer. And I mean, when I think about life altering situations, me developing a prayer language, me learning what prayer does and how it can change the course of someone else's life. Because in that room, we prayed for people who were in life or death situations, who are still alive today. We prayed for marriages that are still together. We prayed for things that, and things that we were clear on, that this is the situation, and that situation changed.
Yeah.
And so for me, learning that I could pray prayers myself alone and have that same impact, but even a greater impact with the others who are touching and agreeing with me, that changed the game altogether. Because
Yes.
I began to, I could think of a ton of people in my family, people I grew up with, people in my city. It was like God began to widen or expand my territory. And I'll give you an example of expanding my territory. I'm at work, right? At my computer, just doing what I do. I was administrative assistant at that time. And the Lord puts New York on my heart. Now, I've been to New York. Before this experience, I was not crazy about New York at all, because something always crazy happened when I visited. And I was like, if I never go to that city again, whatever. But he begins to really burden me. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm thinking in my mind, okay, well, I was doing missions at the time. And so I'm like, okay, well, Lord, are you saying you want me to go to New York? Is this going to be the next mission trip? And that wasn't clicking, in my heart. And so I was like, okay, well, Lord, let me just pray. And I began to pray, Lord, watch over the people and protect them and keep them. And, everything I could think of. Now, for about 2 weeks, I'm praying for New York. I'm praying for New York. I'm praying for New York. I literally had a screensaver, on my computer of the city of New York to remember to pray.
Right.
This was 2 weeks before 9/11.
Wow.
I did not know why I was praying for the city. I had no idea. But when 9/11 hit, I was like, oh, Father.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the university choir that I was a part of when I was in college, that same choir was traveling to New York for a concert. They got detoured to another city, but they would have, had they landed, had they ended up in New York, they would have been a part of all of that. But they ended up being safe and sound somewhere else. And I mean, that kind of situation changed the game for me and made me understand that when God wakes you up to pray, when he calls you to pray, when he summons you, you have got to get on, you got to man your post and not leave it until it's done.
Yeah.
And that gave me a determination that even with people, every person that God gives me a word for it's not necessarily meant for me to go and tell them. Sometimes it's meant for me to pray.
Yes.
And what I have found is that in my prayers, that my confidence in those prayers is still as powerful as me going to them delivering a message.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's no space and time in the spirit. So it's like you're just standing in front of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, this is where I was like hesitant to call it a game, because it is also a very heavy responsibility in, you could be someone's answer, whether you're at home in your prayer closet or whether you're out and about. And like I think it's just so imperative, I think, sometimes for us to kind of like what I was saying before, to get out of our me focus, because we miss out on those opportunities too, where he'll bring them to us and be like, you know, hey, I got this thing for you. And, you know, for anybody that was listening to your testimony about 9/11, if you're sitting in your room right now and you don't think God cares for you, he'll have an absolute stranger that has no idea what's happening, what's going on. Like, you had no specifics on 9/11. He just said New York, right? So I mean, sometimes we'll get a name or an image, or, you know, like, it can be anything really that God can speak through us, or to us. And so yeah, if you think that God doesn't care, that I just want you to hear that testimony of 9/11. Yes, it was a big world thing. It impacted the world, but he does the exact same thing for the bunch as he does for the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. Well, I got this inkling at the beginning, and this is going to put you on the spot, so I apologize ahead of time, but I'm just going to say it was God.
Okay.
When you were talking about singing, I just love the way that you light up. And so I was wondering if you would close us off with a verse or something. And I'll give you a little time to think about it, because I am putting you on the spot. But before you do that, can you share about your business, how people can get connected with you if they want to hear more and stuff like that? Because I love your business and what God's doing with you and through you. And I would love for people to know how to connect with you if they're interested.
Absolutely. My company is called Banner Communications, and you can reach me. I guess the quickest way to reach me is I'm on Instagram as Catrina Friesen, and within my profile are the links to my company. We're located in Atlanta, Georgia, but we are offering online courses to anyone in the world that wants to take them. And our courses change, you know, throughout the seasons. But if you are a singer, an actor, a model, you know, you are someone who is aspiring to be in entertainment, whether that's in front of the camera or behind it, and on the stage or behind the scenes, you know, we'd love to train you. Our company specifically designed to educate, train, and promote performing artists with an allegiance to Jesus Christ. And our mission is to produce works that promote faith, family, and community. So we're very excited about being among people that are talented and want to use their gifts and talents on a global level.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, if you'll just sing us out, that would just be such an honor.
Okay. I would love to. Let's see. There was a song that was on my heart earlier today, and couldn't figure out why, but I guess this is probably why.
Surprise!
Oh, Most High, we sing praises to your name. Oh, Most High, we sing praises to your name, for you are holy and worthy to be praised. Oh, Most High, we sing praises to your name. We sing praises to your name.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Catrina. What a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's great to talk with you.
Yeah, you bet. We'll have to do it again sometime.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
All right, you too.